All right, so here we are. We're back. And in this discussion today, we're actually now going to go into the process of solving problems. So, the problem solving process with Joseph Ganchar with Ganchar Enterprise, and we're just going to get right into this. So, really essential. Many times you have people that have, family divisions and things of that nature where coworkers won't talk or whatever. And it's under what circumstance or what situation or what environmental conflict, meaning like where were they in a actual setting, could be in the park, on the beach, in the mall, wherever, and there was a dispute. Next thing you know, you got major headaches on your plate, and you're like, how am I ever going to sort this out? So when you identify the problem and you actually figure this all out and you actually know what you're up against, now you're going to be able to actually identify potentially in the workplace, why are your staff leaving early, why are people are not able to fully follow through. They say that they're going to do something, they don't follow through on it. Well, what's the point of even having a project if the people are just going to be like, yeah, you know what, thanks, no thanks, whatever, I'm just going to come in and do whatever I want. It's not acceptable. The reality is, in today's day and age, whether you want to accept it or not, after we've had this recent disturbance, I would say, in society, we've actually revealed the productivity of actual, organizations. And the reality is that it's double digit stagnation within people's performance. So we're not talking like 10 or 20, like we're talking like close to 50, 60% of the productive abilities of people that are just washing it away. Oh, I'm just going to, work from home. I'm going to do this and then I'm going to just do that. Instead of actually planning ahead and executing and, looking forward to having, the market demands and solutions given on the exact given moment, because the market is always changing. It doesn't matter what you're in. Could be in finance, could be in real estate, it could be in construction, it could be doing any type of service. If you're providing even a product or a service, that is your market. Okay, so when that happens, then you know that you're up against some major opposition if your stagnation within your organization is even 10 or above. So what you're also going to be looking at is, you know, why are these warnings not given with any result? And there's what I mean by that is, you're trying to help out someone on your team, or a coworker's just trying to look out for you, and you're like, I don't care. Even if the boss comes in and says, hey, like, what's the story here? Or you have ownership over the actual organization itself, and you're like, hey man, I gave you, or hey woman, like, what's going on here? Or however people want to be identified these days, it's kind of appalling to me. And in certain situations and circumstances, kind of blows my mind. But anyways, that's besides the fact of the matter. And next thing you know, you're having an organization that you've created, your own blood, sweat, and tears, and sweat equity into something that all of a sudden you're like, you know what? Enough is enough. I can't actually like figure this out. And what is the root cause? And that's where you're going to start to see some very definitive signals, right? So people leaving early, not following through, then you're no results on, verbal reprimands. So where do we start to identify the root cause of the common issues? Well, you have to look internally in your culture. Otherwise, if you don't, you're going to have what's going to be ended up in a very hot situation. Just like this illustration here shows, you're going to be just sitting there wondering what the heck just happened. My whole organization or the whole crew or whoever it might actually be working beside, with, or above or below or whatever it might be with you, it's complete and utter chaos. So you got to prioritize the problem. So all of a sudden you're like, okay, so, you sat down and just trying to like have basically a one-to-one with that individual. And you're normally going to probably try and start with the most problematic issues, right? Because those are the most prevalent. So, how's their family life? How's their financial situation? How's their, and it goes on and on. And next thing you know, as you start to build rapport and relationship with these individuals, you're going to start to see that there's actually a few layers deep. You'll find the root cause of their lack of follow through or performance or attitude or commitment to whatever that might look like. So you always got to remember, if you're able to prioritize the person that is the issue, you also have to identify the problem with them. So you got to make sure that you ask the right questions. You got to talk to the right people, meaning you're not just going to go and talk to anybody and be like, oh yeah, because you know what? The reality is loose lips sink ships, you know? And there's another one that snitches get, you know, snitches get stitches. You know, it's these sayings, you know, they don't happen by accident. You know, it's kind of the reality of the world that we once lived in and still do. But the fact of the matter is that you got to get hard facts. You got to be able to get involved in the process. You can't just say, oh, yeah, I identified it. Oh, here we go. We just ask a few right questions and off we go and marry on, marry you. And you have to get into the nitty gritty of it, and you have to be able to address it and ask the hard questions that have to be asked. That's part of being in the process of what actually is the not just problem. You're not just dealing with a problem here. You're dealing with your culture. You're dealing with your livelihood. You're dealing with many people's livelihoods, especially if you have a lot of people that are underneath you or that are relying on you. As a fact of the matter, that's probably more of an accurate statement. How many people are relying on you to follow through, to be accountable, to be responsible, and to actually figure out exactly what you have to actually accomplish within a day? You know, you might think, well, I'm just an accountant, you know, I'm just going to just punch in some numbers and whatever. You have no idea that the shipping and receiving department is actually relying on you, because they need to know, it's like, hey, are we actually going to be able to push this through? Because the manager is saying, you know, I need to wait on the accountant to figure out what the numbers are and what we can actually order to actually fulfill the order. You got to be able to, you know, boom, boom, boom. Let's get this thing on the road here. Thankfully and unthankfully, you know what? Here's the reality of it. The market has shifted to such an extent that there's automated systems in place. It's called artificial intelligence. And whether or not you're going to like it or not, it's actually going to probably remove about 80% of the, you know, front line worker positions. Like, well, how's that possible? Well, you go into certain places. There's kiosks there, you know, like touching a screen and hitting a pad and just tapping a card. It's here, folks. And, you know, the reality is that AI is also on a content based. So what does this mean? You're going to put in a prompt. You're going to put in that prompt 20 books. Within those 20 books, it's actually going to remember the front end and the back end of it, kind of forget about what's in the middle. And it's actually going to spit out the result of what you're trying to, or the outcome that you're trying to look for. I don't know if you realize this or not, but that's exactly the way how the human mind actually operates. We're coming into such a definitive moment in history that you are either going to rise or you're going to fall in a very short period of time. So you either got to figure this out and get on board, or you're going to be just sunk. It's just that simple. The middle class is literally going to be divided within a heartbeat or two. So we're just going to kind of leave it at that. Whenever you have these things in place, I'm just going to tap back in here. So you get involved in the process and you prioritize the problem. So now you're going to be selecting the right people to help you in the problem solving process. So what does this mean? Selecting people. You got to select the right people in the problem solving process. Okay. So you got to collect the problems, but not just the problems. You got to collect the causes of those problems, because you have to find out what is the problem. Sure, but what is the cause of it? If you just have a problem, well, then you don't know what the cause is. That's just like, hey, I baked you a cake and there's no eggs in it, but I wish you all the best. The cause of that cake falling apart is probably because there's no eggs in it, something like that. I'm not much of a baker or cook, but I got the general concepts, right? So collecting problem-solving solutions. So here's the other thing. Okay, we're going to be doing this, and here is our current, you know, state as far as what we're able to do for that, you know, task or for that event or for that, you know, problem potentially. You got to be able to have everything in line, in a situational, circumstantial, environmental, categorized opposition, positioning of an opposition. So you have to know what the problems are within all of that, and then you have to know what the causes are, and then you have to know how to provide proper solutions for those things. So you have to prioritize and select the best solution. So you got to make sure that you have things in place that are going to be like, okay, this solution can cover 80% of the problems, that one can cover maybe 3% of the problems, and that other solution can cover 10%. Well, you're still missing a little bit in there, right? So 7% to be honest. But anyways, you have to be able to figure out what is going to get you basically the 80%, because here's the reality of any type of major project or organization or anything that you really want to try and do of substance is you got to put a lot of front end resources, a lot of resources on the front 10% and on the back 10% from a managerial or a leadership type of role. You're going to support the people in order to get them organized, delegated, and energized. Okay, now execute. That's, pretty much your first 10%. 80% from like 20 to 90 is following through within that time frame, as far as, are they able to actually deliver? Is it actually of quality? Does it meet the standard, et cetera, et cetera? And the next thing, on the back end, on the last 10%, you're going to tie it all together and then roll it out. And then you can probably start implementing on the beta end of things, and then you can actually implement it full out, right? So when you're looking at implementing the best solution, that's basically what I was just covering on, okay? So you got to be able to know how to execute things effectively, efficiently, and obviously productively, right? So you have to evaluate these things. You can't just like, okay, we're good to go. No, once you have like a certain amount of volume and you're running it through, then you got to make sure I'm going to evaluate this at, intervals of whatever it might be. Okay, once we hit 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 orders, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, we're good. We're solid. This is actually a flagship product and service that we know that is bulletproof. And then you just roll it right on out. Okay, so with that being said, we're going to be back here next week, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern time. Until then, work hard and stay humble.